Looking back at my first order, it's kind of crazy to think that I almost started collecting Citizen Brick 4 years ago. And also, with my 4 years on YouTube approaching, I'm going to make a couple ranking videos for, you know, all the different customs that I buy for the channel. We're going to start off today with, of course, my top 10 Citizen Brick figures. Obviously, collecting over 4 years, I've been able to accumulate a pretty good collection. Like I said, some older stuff, but for the most part, I was buying as they were coming out. My first purchase being the zombie scout here on eBay for a full figure. Before that, it had just been loose parts from the site. And of course, a lot of the stuff I picked up from the first Citizen Brick Day that I participated in online, and conventions and just other online drops. I was able to grab so many great figures. I think a beautiful thing is that every single Citizen Brick figure probably has somebody that has it as their favorite one in their collection, and I think that is very respectable of Citizen Brick to put out such quality products. And it definitely didn't make it easy to decide out of all the, base retail figures, what are my top 10 that I have in my collection. We're going to find that out today. Before we get into the base figures though, just some very cool parts of my collection I also want to showcase that I really like this believe 1x4x3 brick tall brick here with the Brace's face printed on this. I know that there were definitely a couple of these out there at Brick World when I bought this, so not one of one, but still a very unique piece. It is very cool to have in my collection as a collector. Getting to misprint minifigures, I think my fifth favorite one would probably be the Michael Jackson Thriller zombie here in dark purple. Purple's pretty much the color I collect the most of, and this definitely seems like it is a pretty rare find. Obviously, I don't have the numbers of how many of these were available, but really great printing on the torso, legs, as well as arm printing, facial print as well. Also looking nice, so it's just a nice package. Obviously, would love to have a misprinted head as well as like the normal misprint, but I guess with the printed gray on this to make it zombie-esque, get it. Getting on to the next one is another purple, and it's going to be the Patrick Bateman American Psycho misprint here. Like I said, purple, which again is going to be a little more common probably since I saw this at Brick World Indianapolis, didn't pick it up, and then at Brick World Chicago finally. This isn't going to be another case where just full package minifigure where it's going to be great with the printed legs and torso, obviously, with all the striping. The legs are going to be a little bit blocked there, obviously, because of the jacket, but the black shoe print looks nice, and it's in one of my favorite colors. I do just think the axe mold that they made for the character is also a very nice accessory and very usable in your collection, and I just think this was one of the better minifigures of that year, so having a cool color version of it was also great to pick up. Another one of my favorite minifigures from the year that it came out was the Times Square Elmo. And getting a green version of this, I believe, also at Brick World was also great to add to the collection, since being a Muppet-esque character, you can just have more, unique characters with it being different colors. Doesn't have to just be Elmo, so this could be like my, basically Oscar the Grouch, obviously with a different face print, not going to be exact, but since it's already an approximate of a character, sure, can fit it in like that. The zipper print here looks nice, and I guess if you wanted to, you could switch the torso around so the zipper's on the back to mix it up a little bit, maybe from the Times Square Elmo, fit into your display a little bit better, but nice to have multiple colors. It is a lime green head, which doesn't match the torso and legs, but not a big deal to me, and the fanny pack will be the same. So I guess that would have been nice to have that in a slightly different color, but I guess I could switch it out for a non-printed one if I really wanted to. A more recent pickup from Brick World Chicago at the HQ this year was the Autopsy Enthusiast here in medium lavender, I believe, with, some purple with the dual mold there. So still fits in my collection, is purple-esque. They didn't have any dark purple versions of this, so it's not like that's something I could have tracked down. It is missing the extra face that was on the base figure, which I guess makes sense since that does have like a specific like skin tone to it to make it work with the original release. But overall, it has nice printing, which is all present on the base figure, but having in that more purple color just makes it a little bit more unique and cool for me. And this is probably one of the better figures I picked up at the HQ. And to top it off, a figure that is probably one of one. I picked this up from Minifigure Folks on Instagram with a couple different options that he had for kind of these more unique Air Mag and Citizen Brick logo torso minifigures that he had made. I think there was like blue, which would have been the one I wish I would have been able to get, but I was a little too slow. I think this was basically the last one, but very cool leg overprint, obviously. Very unique color to have the Citizen Brick logo on, and it's nice to have the gold face print there, since I believe that was pretty much reserved just to big shot minifigures for the year, more than likely. And altogether makes a very unique, like I said, probably one of one creation here, and is one of the highlights in my collection, especially in a non-retail minifigure capacity. With that being said, though, let's go to some honorable mentions for the top 10. I will have these in the order I would rank them if they were included, so you could think of these as the top 15 in the overall list, but one of the honorable mentions I definitely want to mention was the Charlie Brown minifigure here. This has probably not had like an actual retail release, what they had it at shows for a really long time, and I'm sure it made it onto the site at some point for Citizen Brick Day. Really love Charlie Brown. I think this was one of the parts I was most excited to try and track down from Brick World when I went for the first time. And, you know, it is pretty simple with just a black stripe and black printing on the head, but is perfect for the character. I guess I could get some short legs on there too. And of course, it has the matching baby to go with it. So, really happy to finally have gotten this one, and is one of the better figures I like in my collection. Sticking to the theme of characters I picked up towards the beginning of my collecting, we have the bolt gun enthusiast here, Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. And, you know, the printing here is going to be pretty good for like a civilian collection if you wanted to throw this in a Lego City, which is something I can appreciate, not something I necessarily look for. But I definitely think here the highlight is going to be the accessory with the actual molded parts for the bolt gun, which was probably one of the parts that I feel like they first kind of did for custom molding. Just thinking back in the figures they had released before this. Also had the custom molded hairpiece, which has been used a couple times now, whether it was the Boogie Nights set or just available loose on the site if you wanted to buy some of the hairpieces in this in different colors, as well as obviously the convention bins. You know, I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4 custom molds, and I guess 5 if you want to count the tube. Obviously, I'm going to guess that's just something they bought and cut up to put on the different parts, but great package overall. You know, the leg print is pretty nice. No printing on the back for the belt to continue around, which I guess is a bit of a negative, but the nice jacket looks good, and overall kind of fits the nature of the character, I feel like, which is why I appreciate this. You know, not enough to be in the top 10, but as one of the first minifigures I picked up from Citizen Brick, that was a pretty good one. Another one that I do really enjoy, but isn't one of my favorites of all time, is the Blacktron zombie here, which had some controversy, I think, where they were worried about a DCMA sort of strike for copyright. So it has been off and on the website, been available in some conventions. I think they finally sold out of this probably, but it was really nice to see the original Blacktron minifigure updated with different added prints, whether it is the boot, all the other, you know, just little details that make this a little bit more modern looking. And they went ahead and zombified it. That was fun. The cracked visor is a nice little touch, especially with the head on the inside with the injured eye to look like, you know, shot his eye out. It's just nice surprise from Citizen Brick, and they even did Castle minifigures later on, so there's like a little bit of like 80s, 90s nostalgia for classic Lego in some of their products, which I can appreciate as a Lego fan. This is probably my favorite zombie minifigure, just because, again, you know, it calls back to Lego and could be thrown into your display if you have a space one. So I think that's just fun, adds a little bit of play and collectability to get more of these, which I do have 2 of them, I think, maybe 3. And, you know, very fun concept, and glad to have these and that they made them. Another minifigure which I think has just a fun design, and this had a nice little story where each of his kids came up with a concept for one of these sketchpad minifigures for one of the C-Vent Comic-Con sort of streams. I can't remember if this was New York Comic-Con or San Diego Comic-Con, but there were 3 different versions, and I think this one's definitely my favorite. Just really nice detail with the added little bit of lines for the paper look, which is a callback to one of their older minifigures. It's a little bit harder to track down, or I think there's also multiple variants of the older designs. These new ones here had a nice little combination of different colors, implying that the original person that drew these on the page used different color pens. So we have like blue and red here. And on the back, you get the black sort of sketch design for the Citizen Brick logo, which I do think is one of my favorite designs for their logo. And also just like the little details, like the red stripe going along the page there, is really nice. And I just think these figures, every single one of the ones that they've done in this style, are just standout and are a nice thing to have in a collection. Is just a general Citizen Brick piece of history. We got one more honorable mention, which will be the founder of Citizen Brick, Joe himself, with his sig fig. I just think this is a very cool figure. A lot of the details are obviously very accurate to real life. I think this is one of their better leg designs for jeans, and the extra little bit of coloring on the belt to give it a more leather texture stands out a lot. And of course, the iconic Citizen Brick sort of uniform shirt here that he always wears at the shows is very nice to have in plastic form. You know, the head here, I don't know if it's 100% a Joe likeness, but I do really love this head as just a nice stubble look, and I wish I could have picked up more of these at a convention at some point, but never saw them in a bin or any misprints. I know they had them at the headquarters when I didn't go, so missed out there, but I always really like their molded sleeves, and I have some, I just haven't gotten around to picking arms to glue them on, but those are a really nice molded piece to get, and I'm sure people really like to use those for customization. And it is a nice alternative to printed arms, which is something we'll see on some of the figures coming up. But this is the last of the honorable mentions. Gotta, honor the creator himself. And I do really like this figure. At the number 10 spot is one of the first figures I remember seeing for sale from Citizen Brick, being the Napoleon Dynamite here with the Vote for Pedro shirt. Slightly enhanced with some legs. You can pretty much get any pair of legs with like a jean sort of waistband. I think the original legs are just plain blue. I threw on the dual molded black and blue legs here for his boot look when he's doing the dance in the, sort of climax of the movie. Hairpiece here is going to be printed, and you can see mine is damaged, which is how I got it. When I was at the first Brick World I went to, I do think they had these hair pieces available to buy more, and I didn't even think about buying an upgrade to fix this. They did make an official color version of this that is going to be medium nougat, which is going to be pretty close to the color that they did here. Obviously, this one's a little more red, so that's something unfortunate. I also have picked up at some point the Crazy Bricks sort of afro piece here as well, which I think I got for free even. Just seeing what that looks like, I thought it would be a good match. The color is not great though, since this is dark tan. Not bad. Maybe I could paint this to make it a little bit better, since it has a little more volume and is probably a little bit more accurate to the movie look for Napoleon. And like I said, with the printed sleeves here, the molded ones that they do now are way better. This is a fun character, and obviously the full set of 4 figures that they end up doing for the movie are awesome, and I'm glad I do have those in the collection. And like I said, these legs are a very good upgrade if you can track something like that down. Number 9 will be another licensed character, being Tony Soprano here. I guess I do need to track down a cigar for him, which was something that was included in the original pack that I don't have with him currently. But molded sleeves, great again for the bowler shirt type design that they made for him. Has a really nice wraparound bit of hair for the back with that brown printing. Looking at it now, you can see where the overlap is, where it's that dark brown in the back there. So I've never noticed that before, but it's definitely noticeable on camera. I'm looking at it. Facial expression, I feel like, is pretty good for the character, and, kind of gives it the essence of the actor. Maybe not 100%, spot on with the likeness, but I do really like the face, and definitely brings me back to the show, and could definitely see him making this expression throughout. Obviously, the chest here is going to look nice as well. And one of the better details is that they do have a printed watch on the minifigure, and I do think that definitely adds to the value and makes it a little bit more premium. Mixing that with the molded sleeves also. Legs are a little bit plain, but that is what he wore. The belt looks nice, so nothing to really complain about here. This is probably one of my favorite TV show minifigures that they've done, and made the top 10. At 8 might be a controversial take with Visible Man, since it's a little bit on the low side. I do really appreciate the design and the printing on this minifigure, but just not one of my favorites. Top 10 worthy, of course, just for the feat that they did here with all the different colors, and obviously being on a very nice transparent base plastic. which made it a little bit more expensive, especially if you got it on the second round. Obviously, I picked it up on the first drop, which was nice to have it for the cheaper price. And it looks nice. It's a great minifigure. I love looking at it every once in a while, but it isn't something that, you know, jumps to mind for me when I think of like characters to grab for comparisons or anything, unless it is a transparent character. And you know, it was kind of a weird situation where they had the misprints for this and really bumped up the prices for them. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I am glad they made the second round of these for people that needed them. And, you know, it had to be more expensive. Fine, I get it. So you can stop scalpers maybe a little bit. But again, you know, not my favorite minifigure, but it's definitely, you know, something to point out from Citizen Brick that looks great, probably took a lot of effort, and definitely commendable for that. The number 7 spot might be a little bit of recency bias since I just got this last month, but the bowling pin head guy is definitely one of my favorite figures. I picked one of these up at the first Citizen Brick Day, obviously with it being the V1 design, which is a little bit more simple, but still really like this. And it was nice to see them upgrade this now to an even better version of the character with more colors, more design, especially with the shoe print, which looks amazing. Definitely nailed the bowling shoe design. Really no complaints about this. I did have a misprint lime one that I got at, I think, the first brick roll I went to. So it was nice to finally pop that onto a figure. The new mustache is a nice little addition too. No complaints here, like I said. Molded sleeves, just really love the concept here, and it's very fun. And I have 2 of the new version and 2 of the old version, so very happy to have these in the collection and are one of the highlights for me. Number 6 is going to be another one of my original minifigures from the first Citizen Brick Day that I participated in, being Mad Max here. And after seeing Road Warrior, this minifigure is a lot better to me, even since I didn't understand the details of it originally, like the leg brace and all that. Had the very cool printed hairpiece, the dual molded brick arms, sawed-off shotgun, also great. My only complaint at the time was that the sleeve was a little bit loose. I ended up getting a second mold of this from one of the conventions, so it's a little bit sturdier on the minifigure now that I have the newer one. So that was really nice, since back when I had the first copy of the molded part, it would just fall off when you're tilting the minifigure around, which is very unfortunate. I guess I would have maybe appreciated like some chest hair. I don't even remember if that's part of his design, but a little bit of black eye there to go with the brace after he gets beat up in that movie, I think from a car crash. Looks great. Again, one of those minifigures where I have no complaints. Great printing all the way around with the wraparound of the legs and everything. It's spot on from the movie and very cool to have in the collection. The number 5 spot is going to be the minifigure that is like the Visible Man for me, but I just think execution-wise, just love this a little bit more, especially since it has the side torso printing and just full wraparound. I can appreciate the artistry behind this a little bit more. This is the first minifigure to come with their molded spray paint bottle, which they've done a couple different times with different spray paint effects. So that was a very cool accessory to get to, but just the fact that they did the math to get like the head completely wrapped around like that, which I know they made jokes about in the post, I'm pretty sure, or on their story at some point, and another case of just so many colors. Look at this one versus this one where the transparent just makes it a little bit more bland and the colors don't pop as much, but since it is just straight white here, I'm just seeing all the colors, and I just think this stands out to me a lot more when I'm looking at my collection as something that is more interesting, and I'm just happy to have it. Which is the reason why I have it at number 5. Number 4 is another one of the event Comic-Con minifigures with the normal Times Square Elmo here, since we're ranking these based off of the ones that were retail instead of misprint, which is why the red one is here. I just think this is a very fun concept. It uses the Citizen Brick big head mold to great effect. And again, full package here where conceptually it's just very funny. You got, you know, the zipper like it's the dude in the costume, and the fanny pack printed is also a nice thing to get since, you know, they've made the fanny pack mold several times, but I think this might be the only time they've printed it. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments if you know, but Really enjoyed this minifigure at the time, and again, still stands out to me as something that is one of my highlights in my collection. The number 3 spot is going to be the only Citizen Brick commission that's going to be in this video, so, kind of breaking the rule of if it is a retail, minifigure, since I'm not sure if somebody else designed this for them to print, but I'm pretty sure Citizen Brick would have still designed it. But it was sold on another person's website as, their product. But everything about this minifigure just brings me a lot of joy, and I'm so glad I was able to pick this up for a really good deal. The gradient that they were able to create for the Neapolitan look worked really well, and just the nice little drips onto the hip of the legs is also just a great detail. The cross work for the cone look too, with the wraparound, just everything fit together perfectly. And you also get a very nice accessory, being a very small trophy, the neutral face, and more Neapolitan striping. So lots of love about this, and the packaging was super fun. Just again, I've been saying this, the full package of this brings me just so much joy, and makes it a very premium product that I'm glad to have in the collection, which is why it's at number 3. The number 2 spot, I'm going to cheat a little bit and just say that it is the Cyborg minifigures that they make. This is one of my favorite designs, whether it is just the base silver, but of course all the misprints I did pick up. I think this is one of the best figures that they've done, especially as the V2. Even the V1 was very cool and had some nice printing to it, where you had all the different technical bits, printing on the front and back with different aspects of it to imply different functions, whether it is wires on the front, different vents on the back for different functions. It just feels like it's very well thought together on how things would kind of piece together and work for this to be an actual living robot. Obviously, the V2 is where the sort of details shine, where they have all the extra printing, whether it is on the legs or the arms. And this just has a special place in my heart as well, which I brought up in one of the Brick World reviews this year, was that this was my first misprint, getting the gold one here, which was very cool to get at the time. I had also picked up a red one, but I had traded that away years ago, unfortunately. But I also got this really cool glow-in-the-dark head as well, which was nice to have. So that's also a plus for all the different misprints. And it was kind of nice. Finally got like a purple for this character, which was one of my big needs from Brick World, especially at the headquarters this year, since once in a lifetime opportunity to like pick and choose what pieces you can get in what colors. Plus, it's just fun if you have multiple colors of the different parts, just to kind of mesh something together, since it feels like it is very built in the factory. And of course, I already showed this off in one of my haul videos, but having a very cool low quantity rare chrome version is also awesome. Which maybe this should have gone earlier too, when I was showing off my favorite misprints, but I, again, just really like the full concept of these characters and want to keep them together. And the number 1 won't be a surprise if you've been watching for a while. Of course, it's going to be the Weird Al minifigure, which was one of the first older Citizen Brick minifigures that I had to track down. And it is kind of cool that recently Citizen Brick made another version of the Van shoes. Obviously, these ones have that dark turquoise sort of coloring, so it's a little bit more unique, but having it available on a bunch of different plastics with a little bit more detail now is also cool. Maybe that means that they could come back and do a version 2 of Weird Al at some point, Parody Enthusiast. I think the way that they did the accordion is very creative, creating the sort of, squeeze box part, I believe, or whatever the technical term is, with the diamond shape in there. That looks cool. And also just the key parts, very minimal part usage to get this together, but fits perfectly, I feel like, scaling wise. And also just the smile on the minifigure head, I believe, is very fun. And again, the full package here is awesome, using the shaggy, dual molded lime arms to do the Hawaiian shirt is also nice and creative. And Weird Al is just one of those artists that I really enjoy, so having a version of him in Lego just is great. And that's one of the best parts of custom Lego, is just getting us these people, these characters that no one would ever make. let's go with some comparisons and the final verdict. It's kind of crazy to look at where I am on YouTube and, of course, collecting Citizen Brick, where almost at the 4-year mark for uploading on YouTube, but also just almost 4 years of collecting Citizen Brick. I made my first order in the first couple weeks of January of 2022, I think. So, it's been a long time. I've gotten a lot of different figures from a lot of different categories and years since I've been getting some on the backlog, like the Weird Al minifigure, or even the Soprano set, which I think came out in the first wave that I bought from. Also might have just been a reprint. I can't remember how that worked, but I am always happy when they come out with like version 2s of old figures, or even, reprinting older ones like the original bowling pinheads, which were from an older CB day as well. It's nice to see them keep different figures out on the market for people joining in late like I did at the time. And it's kind of crazy to think now that I'm going to get to 4 years of collecting. They're going to have their 16th anniversary as a company. So I've been collecting for like 25% of the time that they've been putting stuff out. So, you know, the passage of time is always just kind of a weird thing to think about. And they've put out some really great products. I don't even own everything. I think Guy Fieri would definitely be in a top 10 if I had that in the collection. Obviously, you can see Napoleon Dynamite's just kicked off for now, just because I want to show like just the progress as a company. Version 1, version 2, how much more they are able to do now with custom molds, whether it is the big heads, which are not new by any means, but just different accessories. They're really just upping their game all the time, and like always, I'm just excited to see what they're going to put out, and I'll keep buying as long as they keep making things I'm interested in. But let me know in the comments, are there any custom Citizen Brick figures in your collection that you love? And if you have a top 3, make sure to put it down in the comments. If you want to see more custom Lego or Citizen Brick reviews, check out all the content on my channel. If you want to help out the channel even further, feel free to join as a member for additional perks. Like always, I have been Brick Radiop, and I'll see you in the next video.